The Orthodox Christians of Iraq and Syria are among those most under threat from the advances of the Islamic State organization. 30,000 live in Sodertalje. The established population has been swollen by more than 2,000 refugees over the past 2 years, and more are seeking sanctuary.
The attack of the Islamic State on the areas of the minorities in Iraq especially, we believe this will create a new wave, and we believe that people will soon start to make their way to Sweden actually. Many of them we expect or believe they will end up in Sodertalje because they have relatives, they have friends here, there's a very large community here, so it attracts them.
After the trauma of witnessing war and fleeing their homes, there's gratitude that Sweden has provided safe haven. But many new arrivals find life tough in Scandinavia. Vivian Naum left northern Syria a year ago. She tries to tell her story, but is overwhelmed. These are two of Vivian's daughters, and she wanted them to live in peace. In Syria, the family was reasonably prosperous. Her husband, Riyad, was a teacher. Since arriving in Sweden, he's been unemployed. Job prospects for asylum seekers are bleak. The family is surviving on benefits in a cramped one-bedroom apartment. For the refugees, accommodation is very hard to find.
ضلنا على بيتنا ندفع أجار وهو يمكن يا غرفة وصالون يا غرفتين وصالون ب10,000 كرون. الحلوة إنه بده ياخذ سمسرة عليه كمان 4,000 كرون. يعني صار في ناس عم تستغل أوضاع ناس إنه هن بحاجة لهذا الشيء، فرح ياخذوا عليه حتى المساعدة بدهم ياخذوا عليها مصاري.
This is the biggest influx of refugees that Sweden has accepted since the Balkan Wars of the 1990s. The Migration Board says that by the end of this year, there'll have been 85,000 people who'll have come from Syria and Iraq. Next year, the estimate is 105,000. The cost to the Swedish taxpayer, $4 billion. That's 1% of national output. The Social Democrat mayor is a disciple of Sweden's humanitarian policy. But because Sodertalje is such a magnet, it's struggling financially. The government allows $13,000 per refugee. It's not enough to pay for new schools, nurseries and language lessons. She also believes other towns aren't doing enough to share the burden.
I think we can be the best country in the world receiving refugees, but it has to be a national responsibility. It's not a few municipalities who should take the responsibility for giving the refugees the best start.
The resources of the good ship Sweden are being stretched to the limit, according to right-wing anti-immigrant politicians whose popularity is on the rise.
The money isn't enough, and then there's housing and jobs and dental and medical care and so on. So we simply can't support them in the long run. So I think it's a strain on both these people coming in and the people already living here.
Extraordinarily, the Sweden Democrats' wish to restrict the number of refugees is shared by the Exiles leader. He would prefer that Western assistance enabled Iraqis and Syrians to remain in the Middle East.
If you would have open border policy, so many people would come that Sweden would never be able to cope with it. So we have to somewhere put a figure, a line, and say, and this is what we can cope with. And it's not good for the newly arrived either to come here and just be stuck within four walls and not have a job and never meet a Swedish person. So it's not good for anyone.
But to enable the Syrians and Iraqis to stay put would require either peace or the establishment of a safe zone. For the time being, neither is likely, so the refugees will continue to seek succor in Sweden.